So let's say you want to get into game development, but you don't know what languages to learn. And today we're going to focus on mainly object-oriented programming languages, mainly because they allow for inheritance and polymorphism. And what inheritance does is that it allows the ability to make objects in game take in attributes from like a more general type of object. So let's say you have two enemies. Let's go with a werewolf and a goblin, right? Instead of hard-coding the enemy attributes to each of their classes, like the status of them being hostile or maybe a different color health bar, you can just have a class called enemy with those attributes and have the werewolf and goblin classes extend the enemy class and inherit those attributes. Now both the werewolf and goblin have the enemy attributes without needing to write the same code for those attributes in both classes. So what polymorphism does is that it allows you to call the same function but each of them execute differently. So let's say you have two animals in your game and they each make a different sound. So instead of having a different method or function name for the classes for each of the animals, like maybe one named roar and one named meow, you can just make one function named make sound for both animals with different bodies and then initialize the two classes, call the same function on both the classes, and you'll get different results from both executions. The top three languages I've been seeing a lot from researching this topic is C++, C#, and Java. Why C++ is so good is because of the Unreal Engine. The Unreal Engine is used to make many different games that you may have heard of, such as Fortnite, Borderlands 3, and the Final Fantasy remake. And the advantage of the Unreal Engine is the fact that it has better graphics. Now C# is used with the Unity game engine, which is really good for cross-platform game development. So you'll see a lot of mobile games being developed by this engine. And some of the games that are made with the C# is Fall Guys, Legends of Runeterra, which is the card game made by Riot Games, and Risk of Rain 2. And finally we have Java. Java is really good for cross-platform game development. And according to an article from medium.com, it allows for multi-threading, which uses less memory and makes the most of the CPU to enable better performance. And it also has sockets, which is useful for multiplayer games. And some of the games that are made with Java is Minecraft, RuneScape. Nowadays you don't see a lot of games that are made with Java, mainly because there isn't really any game engines that are made with Java. So as a result, C++ and C# are the best languages to learn for game development because of the available engines that make game development a lot more tangible and user-friendly. Then again, you shouldn't limit yourself to just one language. Many games are actually made with multiple different languages because each language provides a different aspect to the game. For example, according to this Reddit post from Xsquisha, League of Legends is actually made with many different languages including C++, C#, and Java. So the core game is made with C++, the game tools are made with C#, and the servers are made with Java. So for data science, the top three languages would be Python, R, and SQL. I'm going to pull up a graph here that shows you that the top languages that are mentioned in data science jobs applications. So the reason why Python is very good or very popular these days is because it has a vast amount of libraries that provide the tools for handling and visualizing data. It's also beginner friendly. Syntax is fairly easy to learn. It's scalable and fast, so it's especially effective for working with big data and making fast applications. And Python is not just good for data science. You can use it for many different applications. For example, you can use it for backend frameworks such as Django, and you can also use it for machine learning. And the next language would be R. The reason why it's so good and so popular these days is because of its short syntax. So there's not a lot of code needed to create data models, and there are a lot of packages that are designed for data science, since R is a language that was made for analyzing statistics. For example, it can easily connect R to databases, and it can also make fast mathematical computations, so it can create analytical reports. And finally we have SQL. The reason why it's so popular is because it's really good for managing large volumes of data. It retrieves records from large databases very quickly and efficiently. You can arrange data in many different ways to visualize it in different views. And SQL can easily spot any anomalies in your dataset, such as outliers and missing values.
So, what exactly is web development? Now, think about the time when you watched a video on YouTube, or you chatted with a friend on Facebook, or maybe even typed out a report on Google Drive. All of this is essentially web development. So, tools and services that were created using web technologies. Now, in this section, I'll be splitting it up into two groups: front end web development and back end web development. And I'll be giving you a glimpse of the different tools and languages that you might use to succeed in each one of these. So, three things that come to mind when I think of web development. I think HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is a markup language, and it deals mainly with the structure of the web page. So, for example, if you want an image, you can use the image tag, or if you want a header, you can use the header tag. CSS mainly deals with the styling and the formatting of the web page. So, like, think colors. Think if you want to put an element to the left, to the right, that's what it deals with. And JavaScript deals with the making the website interactive. So, like, when you click a button, what happens, stuff like that. So, starting off, I would definitely recommend you sticking with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript first. But as you get more advanced, I would say you want to move on to frameworks and libraries like React, which is a library built and maintained by Facebook, or Angular, which is a framework maintained by Google. Now, what these are basically a set of packages that make your life a lot easier in terms of front end engineering, but they require you to learn more advanced concepts first before diving into them. Now we're going to move on to back end engineering. This is essentially the server side of things. So we have front end engineering, which is more user centered, and then we have the back end where you're basically connecting your application to like a database so that you can store information. Like, for example, when you log in, right, that password, that username or password has to be stored somewhere. So for backend engineering, there are many languages that you can use. So there's JavaScript, where you can use libraries like Node.js and Express.js. There's Python and their frameworks like Flask and Django. And there's just many languages that you can use for backend development. So it's really up to you to choose the language. Now we're going to be moving on to app development. So essentially, app development is creating essentially apps for your mobile device, or software for your mobile device. And there's a couple of languages and tools that are excel in this area. So the first approach to making an app is the traditional native app development way. Essentially, you're using a specific language that's dedicated to a specific system, like Android or iOS. So for Android, you're mainly using Java or Kotlin, and for iOS, you're using Swift. Now, the other way that's gaining popularity in terms of making apps are cross-platform frameworks. Essentially, these frameworks allow you to build apps just use for both Android and iOS using one code base, so one language. Now, two frameworks that come to mind when using this cross-platform approach are React Native and Flutter. React Native is basically a framework that's maintained by Facebook, and what it basically allows you to do is create apps using JavaScript, which basically shows the versatility of JavaScript in that it not only lets you build websites, it also allows you to build apps. So Flutter is another one of these frameworks, and it's maintained by Google. It's another relatively big company, and what it basically does is it lets you build apps using the Dart programming language. These frameworks are definitely great choices when it comes to cross-platform development, but I definitely encourage you to do your research before choosing between native development or cross-platform development. As despite these cross-platform frameworks being very convenient, uh, there's definitely pros and cons to it. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps this channel. And if you have any other video ideas you want us to do, feel free to comment.